Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. You are live with Endeavor Gaming, and today we are going to be taking a look at a beam overload build on the Inquiry class battlecruiser. So let's just go on ahead and get into it. Here we are back in Star Trek Online, and like I said, today we're going to be taking a look at my flagship beam overload build. So let's jump right in. First, we've got setup. So this has been a very big back and forth over the last couple of months, but I think I finally got it tuned in to a point where I'm happy with it. Since I was able to get the 10th anniversary bundle, I was able to get a console I really wanted to get my hands on. Oh, we'll get to that a little bit later. Up front, we are running the Enhanced Biomolecular Photon Torpedo Launcher, the Phaser Wide-Angle Dual Heavy Beam Bank from the Disco Reputation, the Terran Task Force Phaser Dual Heavy Cannons. This can be obtained through the Terran Reputation once it reaches Tier 6, and then 2 Sensor-Linked Phaser Dual Beam Banks. I absolutely love the proc on these. It's a lot of fun, and these are usually my go-to on my heavy DPS beam overload builds. For our deflector, we're using our standard colony one. You have that cold crit. Having that extra crit severity and crit chance is always a nice to have. For the impulse, we're using the prevailing innervated impulse engines. You get a nice boost of speed whenever you're activating firing modes, and there's quite a lot of them on this ship. For the warp drive, we're using the Terran Task Force Quantum Capacitor Warp Core. This is one that was recommended to me by a friend of the channel, and I'm really just trying this one out because of that plus 3.3% all damage per subsystem with 75 or more, and I'm maxing out my power levels a lot, so I'm seeing how far I can push that. Lastly, for our shields, we're using the Revolutionary Covariance Shield array. The only real justification for it is that you're getting a plus 7 to directed energy weapon damage, which is based on your aux power. For our rear weapons, we're using a sensor-linked omnidirectional phaser beam array. Again, I really love the proc on sensor-linked weapons. We're using the trilithium enhanced omnidirectional, and this is going to feed into a set bonus we'll get to a little bit later, and then the heavy biomolecular turret. This rounds out our 2P set for the biomolecular set, and that's giving us a nice little boost to our phaser damage. Alright, the devices are all pretty bog standard. Temporal negotiator when I need it, deuterium surplus for a little extra speed, energy amplifiers for the energy weapons, and then the Kobayashi mirror transponder. They tend to go on basically all of my beam builds, at least these 4. Starting out with our universal consoles, we've had weaponized helical torsion. So this console is one I didn't have because I didn't have the mirror crossfield, but I was able to get it from the 10th anniversary bundle, which is awesome. Nice boost Cat 1 phaser damage, and 15% crit severity is very nice. The click is pretty fun too, so it's nice to have. Next, we have hostile acquisition. Now this one is one of the ones where I take it off sometimes and then I throw it back on because I miss it. The accuracy. Every shot with beam overload that misses is a lot of damage left. The more shots you hit, the better you'll feel. Going down to our engineering consoles, we have the tachyokinetic converter. This is a pretty standard one. Crit chance, crit severity, control, which we'll get into later. The ultimate modified swarm processor, accuracy and crit chance. DPRM, I don't have a build currently that does not use this console. The clicky makes it very hard for you to die, gives you a ton of bonus damage. Reinforced armaments. Now this is getting back to that trilithium omni. I have this on here for the 2P set, and let's go down and look at that 2P set. So when I have both the omni and the console on here, you get a 5% firing cycle haste for energy weapons and plus 15 flight speed. So the speed is nice, but what I'm really looking at is that firing cycle haste. The faster you can get off shots with beam overload, the more damage you're going to do. More shots equals more damage. Easy. And next, we've got binaural infusion circuits. Again, this one's feeding into control and giving me a nice boost to my crit severity. Going down to science, we have the assimilated module, crit chance, crit severity, again, control. You're seeing a lot of control stuff on here, and you'll see why in a little bit. We got Domino on here. This comes from the Bajoran Interceptor. This is a fun console. It's giving you haste, it's giving you weapon damage, and you get to extend it by killing more enemies. It's a win-win. Going on to tactical consoles, we have Lorca's custom fire controls. Most of my beam builds tend to use this console in some capacity. The shield pen is nice, crit chance always great, weapon power setting, more damage. Let's go. Next we have the weapon sensor enhancer. This is a lot like the previous console I was talking about. This is feeding into my accuracy and, again, a nice boost to control expertise. Our last two consoles here tend to get switched out based on what I'm trying to do, but we've got a locator and an exploiter. So one's giving me phaser damage and critical chance, the other one's giving me phaser damage and critical severity. I'm going down to those stats. Right now I'm resting at a 45% for my crit chance and a 241% for my crit severity, and that tends to go up quite a bit in combat. So for our specializations, we're running Intel and Strategist. Intel's going to be the really important one. Getting that flanking bonus is very, very nice, and the added stealth will help later, and we'll get into that when we start talking about our traits. And speaking of which, our traits. Here we're running Good Day to Die. This is one I find fun, and giving you the ability to raise all of your resistances early without having to drop to 50% integrity is a nice to have as far as survivability. Next, Adaptive Offense. Just gaining some crit chance, and then when you're getting a critical hit, some of your crit chance becomes crit severity. So when you're critting a lot, higher numbers. Let's see, next we got Context is for Kings. This is a pretty nice one because you really get a win either way. If you took damage in the past second, you're getting damage resistance, and if you didn't take damage in the past second, you're getting bonus damage. And this ship heavily focuses on not taking damage. So I'm going for that second one as much as I can. Now this one can come off and go on for something else if you're running solo content, but at least for TFOs, Fleet Coordinator is a very nice to have. 2% bonus all damage per team member. So if you're running a full team in something like an ISE, you're getting up to 10% bonus damage. It's a nice one. And here we go. I was talking a lot about control expertise, and this is why. Fragment of AI Tech. You get energy weapon damage based on your control expertise that maxes out at a 30% boost to your energy weapon damage at 300 control. And as you can see, I am maxing it out. Getting a nice 30% boost to my energy weapon damage and another 50 to my control expertise. Also, as a sort of aside, if you're fighting anybody that uses control abilities, you got good resist to those. Next, we have Intelligence Agent Attache. So, critical strikes will restore a small amount of captain ability recharge. So to give you an idea, when I get a crit hit, the cooldown of some of my captain abilities is going to go down. Now this doesn't include bridge officer abilities or anything, but it will include some really important ones, like this one down here, Attack Pattern Alpha 3. This is a fun ability. You're talking about almost 50% bonus all damage, 5% crit chance, almost 50% critical severity, and plus 120 turn rate. The more you can get this ability to activate, the better life will be. Next, we've got Terran targeting systems. So, pretty easy aside, plus 15 critical severity, but the trade-off is when you get crit hit, your speed gets reduced by 10% for 5 seconds. Max once in 15 seconds. So you are trading off possibly being slowed down by enemies, but that 15% crit severity, in my eyes, 100% makes it worth it. Next, we've got Superior Beam Training. This one kind of goes without saying. 7.5% bonus beam weapon damage. I mean, Cat 2, gotta go with it. Here we have Innocuous, a nice little boost to our crit severity, as well as taking a little bit of threat off of us. Like I said, aiming on not getting hit is going to be the mission here. And finally, rounding out the pack is the Boimler effect. I love this trait. I am terrified they are going to nerf this trait, but until they do, I am going to run the hell out of it. 17% chance on every non-specialization bridge officer ability. Will recover the recharge time of all other bridge officer ability to their global cooldown. That is ridiculously overpowered, especially when you think about the fact that on this ship, I only have 4 specialization abilities and the rest of them are non-specialization and have that 17.5% chance of activating. And from what I've seen so far, I'm basically guaranteed it in a rotation, and we'll see what that means a little bit later. Moving on to our starship traits, we have the Best Diplomat. This one works really well into my power level management because I'm maxing it out basically as much as I can. So whenever I activate Beam Overload, beam weapon damage is going to be improved by my engine, shield, and aux power levels. So if these are at 100, that's a lot of bonus damage. Let's go. Next we have Super Weapon Ingenuity. This one really needs no explanation. It's a duration increaser for Beam Overload. If you want it up as much as you can, this is the trait to get. It comes off of the Adeleth. It's available in the Lobby store or on the exchange. Next we have Strike from the Shadows. This trait is also feeding into my idea of not getting targeted. So when damaging a foe that doesn't have you targeted, I get to decrease my threat generation by another 60%, I get 5% crit chance, and then a 5% bonus all damage. And it also placates the first target that gets hit by this until I deal about 30,000 damage and some change. Next, we've got Promise of Ferocity. This is just a 4% bonus weapon damage for the duration of combat when using any pilot or tactical bridge officer ability. This is nice because I've got, 4 tactical abilities on here. So it might take a little bit longer to buff up than, say, an escort or something, but I'm still going to get as much as I can out of this. It's only going to take 1 extra rotation to get the max stacks. And now, finishing off my whole idea of not getting targeted, we have Exitus Active Probat. I love this trait. I think it is very fun, especially in PvE. When activating any intelligence, bridge officer ability, or jam sensors, plus 504 stealth for 20 seconds, plus 15% bonus weapon damage for 20 seconds, and plus 40 to my control expertise. This trait makes it so that enemies in PvE will basically never be able to target you. It'll give you a nice amount of bonus damage, and I mean, there's really not a whole lot of drawbacks with it. Which also brings me back to the Boimler effect. Whenever it goes off, I can just throw up another intel team, meaning I don't have to have 2 of them on my bridge officer stations anymore. I used to have to run 2 intel teams and then OSS. I was able to take that off because of this trait. Alright, rounding out our traits here. Space Reputation, Tyler's Duality, giving me 5% crit chance right now, although that tends to go up to 7.5% when I'm actually buffed up. We have Landry's Loyalty, which is every time I get a crit hit, I can cleanse 1 random debuff. It tends to come in handy quite a bit. Magnified Firepower. This is a great one. 6.3% bonus weapon damage. Can't go wrong. We have Precision, which is just a 5% boost to my critical hit chance. And then we have Advanced Targeting Systems, which is a plus 16% bonus to my crit severity. Moving on now to our bridge officers. For the intel seat, like I said, I was able to take off the second intel team, so I'm running Intelligence Team 1, Focused Assault, and then OSS. OSS is completely maxing out my power levels, and then I'm also losing at the end of that. 1 random subsystem will go offline, unless I get a crit hit, because then Landry's Loyalty cleanses it, and now it comes full circle. For this ensign seat, we've just got Chemicide in here. It's a nice little damage boost, especially for my torpedoes. Moving on to our main taxi, we've got a Torpedo High Yield 1. I used to use Spread, but that Biomolecular Torp is just so much fun on High Yield. Even on High Yield 1, it can be the thing that does more damage than my Dual Beam Bank. Here we've got Cannon Scatter Volley. So this is really just to get my turret firing as much as possible, and we'll get into why in a minute here. And then, obviously rounding this out, we need Beam Overload 3 for our Beam Overload build. On our engineering seat, we've got Structural Integrity Collapse. It's a debuff and it does some physical damage. We've got Emergency Power to Weapons 2, give us a little more oomph. We've got Narrow Sensor Bands, which is giving us some bonus energy weapon damage based on our distance from the target. And finally, we have Mixed Armaments Synergy. Mixed Armaments Synergy is what makes this ship and the Gagarin absolutely amazing for Beam Overload. Activating a beam, cannon, mine, or torpedo will cause you to gain plus 50% bonus all damage for the other 3 types of weapons. This is why I have Cannon Scatter Volley. I want that turret to shoot off as much as it can, because every time it shoots off and it's under Mixed Armaments Synergy, I'm getting tasty damage from my beams. And finally, rounding out this science seat, we've got Structural Analysis 1 as a debuff, and then Destabilizing Resonance Beam, again, as a debuff. I don't really need whole heals on here. I don't get targeted in PvE, so I didn't bother using them. Let's see. Let's finish this up here by looking at our doffs. We've got a couple of board bridge officers here. We've got 19 of 47, so 15% chance on engineering of setting power levels to maximum for 5 seconds. And when I activate one of my 2 miracle worker abilities, I can get weapon armor penetration. 24 is very similar, except now it's on tactical and miracle worker, and it's doing power levels and critical chance, which is very nice. We have this guy, this Romulan here, who has a 5% chance of giving me a plus 20 to shield power for 10 seconds when activating energy weapons. This is, again, just one of those things that sort of feeds into my power levels, and I found this kind of fun. We've got a Suliban here that gives my first shot with Beam Overload a 30% chance to increase my shield pen by 35%. The more shield pen, the better, and if a Beam Overload shot ignores shields, it's gonna do a lot of damage. Next, to sort of feed into the biomolecular having a longer than average cooldown, especially considering we're not using spread, I've got a duty officer on here that's giving me a recharge time reduction to my torpedo. And then rounding out, we've got Gerald. Got a chance of temporarily improving my ship's weapons, shields, engines, and auxiliary powers on the use of any emergency power ability, which I happen to have right here. Funny how that works out. So, that's the ship. Let's see it in combat now. Let's take it into a couple of patrols. We'll do what we normally do. We'll take it into a wanted to show its just sheer damage, and then we'll take it into something a little bit harder to see how it performs. So, let's get into it.
Entered an area controlled by... You are now... Looks like our fight got them to notice us. Let's go over and ask if they're stalled so I come out of hiding. Picked up a Type D transmission on a equipment can eliminate board vessels easily, but it is hard to separate rumor and fact. We don't have any first-hand evidence of such attackers, but multiple parties have reported this.
That thing absolutely melted through that patrol. I don't know if you guys were watching that little hull integrity thing, but I don't think I ever saw it drop below 90%. Not getting targeted is the name of the game, and this ship does it fantastically. So let's warp out and let's give it a bit more of a challenge, shall we? Like you saw, when I was using Boimler's effect, I was getting my beam overloads off whenever I needed them. I had intel team up basically all the time. It's a really nice to have. It's one of the reasons why I am terrified that they're going to nerf this ability back down. Because 17.5%, that's a pretty good amount. Alright. Let's see what this thing can really do, shall we?
To see you, my friend. As you can see, I'm in a... We can ponder... We did it. Sensors are clear, for the moment. 2 of our ships were...
That rift's...
Klingon vessels are warping into your position.
Thank you for coming. Truly the blessings.
Our systems... Under the circumstances... If you feel... It's one less rift to worry about. Let's regroup with Mark.
Bad news, I'm afraid. Klingons are approaching our position.
And that is a run if ever there was one. Didn't even blow up.
I think that was the last of them, indeed.
This thing leverages the best of my survivability tactics with a whole lot of damage potential. The Inquiry is one of my favorite ships in the game, and it's one of the reasons why I love Beam Overload so much. And it's even better because there are even alternatives to this ship if you don't want to fork over the keys or the energy credits to get a promo ship. A very similar ship to this that can have a pretty much identical setup would be the new legendary D7 that's in the Zen store, or even the Gagarin to a degree. You'd give up the Exitus Acta Probat and the intel abilities, but you would still have a great amount of damage. And the D7 has the benefit of still having Miracle Worker and intel seeding. You'd only get Mixed Armaments Energy 2 and you wouldn't get Narrow Sensor Bands, but we're talking about a couple thousand DPS at best. And when I was running similar builds between the D7 and this ship, they were coming out pretty similar. But this is the build. One of my favorite ships in the game, stupidly powerful, hard to find. I hope everybody enjoyed. So that's gonna be the end of this video. If you guys enjoyed it, want to see more, feel free to click down on the channel, find some of the other videos. We do have a Beam Overload build on the D7 if you want to check that out. It's pretty similar to this one, and obviously it is a much more attainable ship. But a lot of people have been claiming their meta event things either at the end of the last event or at the end of this one, so if you want a great contender, I recommend the Inquiry class. As always, you have been live with Endeavor Gaming, and remember to keep calm and game on.